You were also listening to the comments from the CEO of Lufthansa. What was the biggest standout to you, the biggest surprise that you heard?
The biggest surprise that this seems to be a deliberate action. It appears that the plane was taken over manually without any kind of autopilot being in control. And it looks like it's deliberate action from everything they're saying.
And how unusual is it? Part of that is that one of the pilots, of course, left, couldn't get back into the cockpit, the co-pilot locking him out. How unusual is it for one pilot to leave the cockpit during a flight?
Well, we're talking about this is international. Here in the U.S., it's required that if a crew member leaves the cockpit, for example, to use the lavatory, that another crew member has to be in the cockpit, such as a flight attendant. In the instance here, it's a foreign country. They did not have that requirement, so there was, in fact, one person in that cockpit by themselves. That wouldn't happen here in the U.S.
Well, what part of that, I don't want to make you speculate here, but what part of that is not only European rules, but perhaps that it was a budget airline, so they didn't necessarily have the crew members for that?
No, it would be a regulation that would be in place, and they would be forced to comply if that was, in fact, the case. But from all reports and from what I'm hearing, that was not the case. They are not required to have another individual in the pilot. It wouldn't be a matter of the airline, a financial constraint. There are flight attendants on board the airplane, and if needed, they would, in fact, be in that cockpit if the regulations were in place.
Kyle, how do you understand the structure of the door, the lockability, I guess, of the door? Apparently there's a lever that the person inside the cockpit can operate, which either opens the door or locks it, and apparently there's also a keypad on the outside. So how could you lock someone out, or how could you get in if you were outside?
Basically, there's a three-position control between the pilot and the co-pilot. There's unlock, there's normal operation, and there's unlock. If that's unlocked, the door would be closed and anybody would be free to enter from the outside into the cockpit area. If that control was in the normal position, that keypad would be enabled. So in other words, a flight attendant or the pilot could actually dial in that code and gain access to the cockpit. In this case, it appears that was on the locked position, which would disable that keypad, so there would not be any kind of entry allowed via that remote keypad on the passenger side of the cockpit door.
What kind of other solutions might there be to sort of help navigate this in the future, to sort of, yes, have the fail-safe on the outside, but also have a fail-safe from the inside?
You know, I think the way the system is here in the U.S., it really works perfectly. And this is, if this is a criminal act, it would be a bad apple in the bunch. I don't think any regulation change is necessary here in the U.S., but what I think this is going to do for foreign countries, they're going to reevaluate that, and I think it's going to wind up being like the policy here in the U.S. is where it's required to have two individuals in the cockpit at all times.
I wonder how the investigation will go from here. I mean, they're still looking for, as far as I understand it, the second voice recorder, the second contents of the black box, which was found empty. And they have to, evaluate whether or not the co-pilot was actually conscious, or he had to be conscious because he was physically locking the door.
Yeah, that is correct. And, you know, they're gonna analyze that. They're going to analyze the recordings. They're going to scrutinize this co-pilot's history, his medical history, his financial condition. Is there any reason for him to bring that airplane down? They'll look at his bank accounts, his bank balances. They'll talk to his family, to his friends, to his coworkers to see if there was any unusual activity in the days prior to this incident.
The Lufthansa CEO said that the co-pilot was deemed 100% fit to fly, and that he did undergo a thorough exam. Quote, what does that mean? What kind of exams are we looking at?
That would be basically in what's here in the U.S. known as a first-class medical exam. It's done every 6 months, and it's basically a full physical examination, of the individual. Everything from, checking your heart rate, blood samples, drug tests, that sort of thing. Just like a normal person would go for, a routine physical, but more in depth. There would obviously be an EKG involved to make sure this person is in the correct state. But the one thing I want to say is, there's not any kind of psychological testing in most medical routine certifications. So this might have happened in the very beginning when he was hired. There might be a brief psychological exam, depending on the airline's procedures. But after that, it's typically, a 6-month evaluation.